Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for joining this webinar about the updates to the CAP Online platform. During this presentation, I am going to provide a quick refresher on the updated expectations for the CAP guidelines, walk through the aligned updates to the CAP Online platform, outline available resources to support use of the updated platform, and then for those joining live, I'll open the floor for questions. As a reminder, this session is specifically designed as a high-level overview of the changes to the platform. The upcoming CAP Manager trainings will provide much more detailed instructions for how to actually use the platform during each step of the CAP cycle. While many of the pages have been updated, and you'll see that on the slides to come, we do not anticipate that these changes will have large impacts on your actual workflows in tryouts. As you know, this year, all sponsoring organizations are required to implement all CAP cycles according to the expectations in the 2024 guidelines for the candidate assessment of performance. While many of you are deeply familiar with these expectations, I'm going to begin with a brief refresher with a specific focus on changes that directly impacted updates to the CAP Online platform itself. So you'll see several abbreviations in this presentation, and again, many of you are likely very familiar with them, but the candidate assessment of performance will be referred to as CAP. Sponsoring organizations are shortened to SOs, CAP Manager to CM, Program Supervisor to PS, Supervising Practitioner to SP, and Teacher Candidate to TC. There were three major changes in the 2024 CAP guidelines. First, all essential elements were revised to align with the updated standards for effective teaching practice, which center culturally and linguistically sustaining practices. Second, new evidence collection expectations require that each category of evidence must be used at least once. This includes observations, the professional practice goal, the measure of student learning, student feedback, and candidate artifacts. Each essential element must be demonstrated by at least two categories of evidence, and observations must be one of the two categories of evidence for 1A1, subject matter knowledge, 2A1, high expectations and support, and 2B2, safe learning environment. Finally, sponsoring organizations must verify whether each SP meets DESE's expectations for the role. If not, organizations must attest that attempts were made to find a qualified SP and that additional supports will be provided to the candidate as needed. A link with additional information about these and other changes in the guidelines will be posted in the chat for your reference. With that foundation, I'm now going to move on to share the aligned updates specifically made to the CAP Online platform. The motivation for these updates and the primary focus of all revisions was to align the CAP Online platform with the expectations in the 2024 CAP guidelines. We also saw this as an opportunity to seek feedback and respond to user feedback about functionality. Many of your suggestions were implemented, while others were not possible due to technical constraints of the system, but we tried our best. During this webinar, I will walk through each page on the CAP Online platform and share changes that will impact the user experience. I do want to note that smaller changes, such as revisions to page titles or some of the instructions, have been made but will not be referenced today. It is also very important to note that these changes will only apply for cycles created on or after September 1st, 2025, and will not have an impact on historical data. For this reason, it is crucial that you refrain from creating any new cycles until September 1st, 2025. So now I'll go ahead and jump into the updates that were made. Sponsoring organizations have for a long time requested the ability to assign CAP Manager permissions to more than one person. And I'm very happy to share that SOs may now have up to 3 CAP managers. SOs with a directory administrator may do this independently in your settings. And if you have questions about that, feel free to reach out to our team. Those without directory administrators can send a request to our email, educatorpreparation@mass.gov, and we can make that change for you. There should only be multiple CAP managers in cases where candidate numbers or program structures make it difficult for one person to manage all cycles. In these cases, each should own a subset of cycles from start to finish rather than portions of the same cycles. And this is just to ensure that work is not overwritten in error. As with the updated guidelines, the biggest change to the online platform is that the essential element numbers, names, and proficiency descriptors have been updated throughout. DESE's PST and CAP guidelines webpage includes a variety of resources to support organizations in understanding the updated elements and using them in cycles. And we'll go ahead and paste a link in the chat to those resources now. With those overarching changes as the foundation, I am now going to walk through changes to each page within the online platform, beginning with the CAP form. When starting a cycle, the CAP manager or program supervisor is responsible for verifying whether the supervising practitioner meets DESE's expectations for the role. This section of the CAP form will only be visible to the CM and PS. Neither the questions or the answers that are selected will be visible to the SP or the candidate. The CAP manager or program supervisor will use radio buttons to select yes or no for each of the expectations. For example, answering whether or not the SP has received a summative rating of proficient or higher in their most recent evaluation. If no is selected for one or more of these expectations, additional questions will appear to attest that the organization made attempts to find an SP who fulfills all expectations as was unable to do so, commits to directly supporting the candidate with additional supports to address the gap, and has notified the candidate of both the gap and the supports that will be provided. In this case, an open response box will also appear where the person completing the form should list the specific supports that will be provided to the candidate. All of these questions must be answered in order to officially complete the CAP cycle. While the structure of the rubric summary and self-assessment forms remain largely the same, we have added banners to remind candidates that the complete box at the end of the rubric summary must be checked to access the self-assessment. This is a fairly small technical step, but it is often the reason that cycles cannot progress or be closed. So in addition to DESE's red alerts, we really encourage CMs and program supervisors and supervising practitioners to continue to alert candidates of the importance of this step in order to move forward. The professional practice goal page has always included the finalized goal, implementation plan, and measure of student learning tool and parameters. It now also includes a section about the student feedback instrument and administration protocol. Like the prior section about the measure of student learning, this section should be completed by the supervising practitioner with input from the program supervisor and candidate. The information entered in this stage on this form is the plan for implementation. The actual results of the student feedback and the candidate reflection form should be uploaded as tagged evidence. There are several changes on both the announced and unannounced observation forms. At the top of each announced observation form, the program supervisor will be asked whether they are conducting the observation in person, virtually synchronously, or virtually asynchronously. This question will only appear on announced observation forms, as both the supervising practitioner and the program supervisor must be in person for unannounced observations. As is detailed further in the guidelines, the program supervisor may only conduct these observations virtually if DESE pre-approval has been granted, and that should be made clear to program supervisors if that is the case. In alignment with the guidelines, focus elements are now the same across all observations. All forms will include a list of the required focus elements and optional elements at the top. The required elements will also be bolded within the synthesized evidence table. So here you can see that safe learning environment is a required element, while adjustments to practice is not. Field supervisors must enter observation evidence into the box for each required focus element in order to complete the form. Evidence for optional elements may be included if desired and if observed, but they will not limit you from selecting complete and moving on. While the paper observation forms include an optional space for active evidence collection, this box is not included in the CAP Online platform. We made this decision because the platform does not allow auto-saving, and we worried that raw notes taken during an observation could accidentally be lost. Supervisors should take these low inference notes in a separate document, whether on their computer or on paper. After the observation, supervisors should then add key evidence into the synthesized evidence section of the online form. The feedback section within each observation form includes space to document, first, the candidate's current strengths and areas of growth, as well as specific strategies or recommendations to reinforce or improve these areas. These judgments and recommendations may be tied to individual elements or may span multiple elements. Regardless of their scope, they should be constructive, targeted, and actionable. For candidates enrolled in early childhood, elementary, and moderate disabilities PK2 or PK8 programs, the early literacy look-fors will be automatically embedded at the top of announced observation 2. This form is embedded within observation 2 as it is recommended that the early literacy observation occur near the end of the practicum while candidates are assuming full responsibility for instruction during a literacy block. While DESE does recommend that this occurs as part of the announced observation 2, there may be circumstances where a triad prefers or needs to complete the observation during announced observation 1. If this is the case, the triad should complete the announced observation 2 form with the early literacy observation form included first. They should then complete announced observation 1 without the early literacy form during the second observation. The CAP Online platform does not prevent these forms from being completed out of order. When completing the announced observation 2 form, supervisors for candidates in early literacy programs will automatically be prompted to take the following steps. At the top of the form, the supervisor will be prompted to select the look-for grade band that aligns with the candidate's practicum placement grade. For example, an elementary candidate placed in a first grade classroom would select the PK3 grade band. For an elementary 1 through 6 candidate placed in a fourth grade classroom, the 4 through 5 band should be selected. The supervisor will then add evidence of the early literacy look-fors in the notes section. So you can see that the black text includes what you are looking for, and then there's a notes box at the bottom. Finally, the supervisor will incorporate what they noticed into the synthesized evidence for the 3 required focus elements and actionable feedback as relevant. It is crucial that supervisors understand that the look-for's notes are for their reference when completing the synthesized evidence and actionable feedback sections, but will not show up in the formative and summative assessments. Given this, it is very important that early literacy specific feedback is woven into the general observation feedback forms so that it is incorporated into the formative and summative feedback forms. We also made several changes to the assessment forms. As with the prior version of the platform, supervisors will check off the categories of evidence used to determine ratings for each essential element. In the past, the specific categories of evidence required for each element were bolded. This bolding is now removed as there is more flexibility for which categories of evidence you use for which element. It is important that supervisors check off the evidence boxes in alignment with the pre-populated observations and tagged evidence files. The observation boxes will automatically fill based on what was entered into the synthesized evidence boxes on the announced and unannounced observation forms. Evidence files will show up based on how they are tagged when uploaded by the SP, the candidate, or the PS. Given this, it is critical that they understand the importance of tagging each file both to the aligned elements as well as accurately identifying evidence categories, as this will inform where they show up in the assessment forms. As is outlined in detail within the guidelines, each category of evidence must be used to support the rating for at least one essential element. The rating for each essential element must be supported by two categories of evidence, and for 1A1, 2A1, and 2B2, observations must be used as one category of evidence. The platform will not automatically check for this. Given this, sponsoring organizations must have systems in place to ensure that these expectations are met for each candidate. And this responsibility rests primarily on the supervisor supporting the candidate, but may also be a role for the CAP manager. As in the past, appropriate use of evidence is something that DESE will check for in the random sample of performance assessments during formal reviews. The last set of updates relates to the reports section of the online platform. Sponsoring organizations that do not use the CAP online platform throughout candidate cycles, for all candidates or a subset of candidate cycles, must download a new template spreadsheet prior to uploading cycle ratings. The new spreadsheet is directly available for download on the Upload Cycles page. It includes different codes for the new essential elements, as well as additional columns to report observation modality for the program supervisor. We have posted a quick reference guide with additional information about this process on the CAP online platform webpage. And as usual, our team will also provide live trainings for this process in late spring when it is relevant for organizations. Finally, sponsoring organizations now have the option to download reports for either all cycles completed with any single year, all cycles completed prior to the 2024 CAP guidelines, or all cycles completed using the 2024 CAP guidelines. This will ensure that the data differentiates between the old and new essential elements. With that, I am going to move on to sharing an overview of the available resources to support your implementation of the platform. And as I speak, one of my colleagues will share the web pages and registration links in the chat for easy access. The PST and CAP webpage includes a wide variety of resources, including guidelines, an implementation handbook, all required and optional forms, quick reference guides on a range of topics, slides and recordings of prior webinars, and more. It also includes a link to the CAP Resources Hub, where we continue to add resources shared by your peer sponsoring organizations from across the state. There is also a webpage specific to the CAP online platform, which focuses specifically on the technical aspects of the system. It houses comprehensive user guides and quick reference guides for CAP managers, program supervisors, supervising practitioners, and teacher candidates, as well as frequently updated questions that we answer that come in from the field. This page is a very important resource for both CAP managers and the members of each triad when moving through the steps of each cycle and troubleshooting technical issues. We strongly encourage that you share it with any member using the CAP online platform. We will also be hosting 3 CAP manager trainings at the end of August and early September. These trainings will cover similar content to prior years, but have been revised to incorporate everything that CAP managers need to know about the updated platform. Anyone who is new to the CAP manager role is required to attend one of the sessions, and others are strongly encouraged. Finally, we will hold CAP Online platform office hours during busy periods within the CAP cycle. The first sessions will be this fall when you are beginning to start new cycles, and additional information about those dates, as well as the link to join, will be shared in our upcoming EE newsletters. Thank you so much for your attention during this presentation portion of the webinar. I truly hope that the information was useful and will set your organizations up for success as you open new cycles for the coming year.